Happy Halloween, everybody, and welcome to this month's PopCross Community Redraw. Well, sort of. See, once a month, my awesome subscribers have a chance to participate in a monthly art challenge, where at the end of which, I take a whole bunch of the submitted art, show off some of it in the video, and take a select few and redraw them in my art style. Or sometimes I'll venomize them or fuse them together or something like that. But this month, I thought I'd do something a little bit different. Partially inspired by the awesome art channel ADC Art Attack, who has a bunch of videos professionally coloring in coloring books. Really great art channel, by the way, I'll link it in the description below. Make sure to check it out. But anyway, I thought it would be cool to take a bunch of the line work and ink drawings from my subscribers and color them in my coloring style, because I think one of the most distinct parts of my art style is my coloring. So I thought it would be really cool to do more of a collaboration with my subscribers and have a fusion of their artwork and my artwork together. So in today's video, after having gone through all of the incredibly awesome submissions, I'm taking 9 black and white Halloween-focused drawings and coloring them in with my coloring style. I'm super excited to see how this goes compared to other monthly art challenge redraws, and I hope you all are as well. If you want to hit the like button, that's always helpful for YouTube algorithm reasons. And if you're not subscribed and you want to participate in a future redraw, make sure to subscribe. I'll announce the theme for next month at the end of this video. But anyway, for now, let's start in with the first drawing. Let's go! Our first submission of this really cute flying cat character comes to us from Sad Dragon Child, who has submitted tons of awesome characters over the last while. Honestly, any one of them could have gotten picked for a redraw and have been in the honorable mentions, but just didn't happen to get picked. And the thing that jumped out to me about this one that got me excited about it was how crisp and clean and simple the line work was. It was really nice, really well executed, and I immediately had the idea to give this character some tiger stripes, to give it a bit more detail. And this also gave me a nice opportunity to practice some subtle light fur rendering. And I'm doing that just in the lighting and shading stage with some sort of, like I trace out an area with my lasso tool and then just brush in a little bit of lighting. I do it more at the end, and I think it works really nicely to give the subtle idea of fur without over detailing a character that's generally pretty simple and cartoony looking. And I think the really simple line work mixed in with this less simple but still simple-ish coloring and rendering style ends up looking really, really nice. I just love the combination of Sad Dragon Child's line work with my coloring. I think it's a really nice pairing, and it got me excited to try out a bunch of other people's line work styles with my colors as well. I guess I made this one a little Charizard looking as well with the color combination. That was unintentional, but overall, love how it turned out. Thanks for all the submissions, Sad Dragon Child. I hope you like what I did with this one. Our next awesome, cool, creepy character comes to us from Manda on the Discord, with a description that goes like this. This is Killerbox, an alien octopus-like creature that inhabits an arcade game. He is an important character in a dark fantasy supernatural story of mine, and appears in many fantastic titles that I have yet to write, including Omega 2, Killerbox, the game of cosmic horror, Killerbox Love and Black Coffee, and Killerbox Goes to Therapy. I tried to get a lot of detail on his skin to show his texture, but I left the box and screen blank so you could add designs and details if you felt like it. And I honestly ended up focusing most of my time on the actual character, not so much the box. I mean, I guess they're like connected. I do end up putting something in on the screen that I thought was a kind of fun reference to some of my old animated stuff. But overall, I wanted to focus on rendering the texture and the shininess on the actual goopy, like, octopusy parts of the character. And I really loved rendering this out. You gave me a good idea of what to do, but also enough creative freedom to add my own sort of texture to it. I rendered it very similarly to how I render venomized goop on characters, to make sure it had that sort of slimy, octopusy kind of feel to it. This was another submission that had pretty thin line work that I really like. It's really crisp and clean and well done. But for the next one, I'm gonna try some different types of line work. But for now, I've finished up Killerbox. I hope you like what I've done with it. Now, one thing that I thought was really cool about this art challenge this month was seeing how different people's art can look without the coloring to it. Because I've been doing these challenges for so long, I've seen a lot of art from the people who were submitting for this episode, and there were lots of times where I would kind of recognize someone's art and be like, wait, this looks familiar, and then I'd look at the name and I'd be like, oh wow, I do recognize this art, but it can look super different without the coloring to it. Color can really change a person's piece. Comic book fans will probably already recognize that if an artist they really like will have a different colorist working with them from one comic book to the next, it can vary things up drastically. It was really interesting to see how much some people will leave a lot of the rendering to the coloring stage and how some people will do a lot of it in the inking. Anyway, I'll show off more submissions later, but back into the coloring. Next up is a character coming to us from Lazy Snake, with a drawing that style-wise has a bit more line weight variety to it, which is something that really drew me to it. And there's a description for this one, so let's get into that. I'm still unsure of what exactly they're going to be called, but the gist is that they're a type of undead creatures that were resurrected from the skeletal remains of various animals via magic. This means that there could be one born from the skeletal remains of a dog, a bull, a rat, or anything, so long as it has a skeleton. This specific one is based on a hyena. They are a naturally chaotic bunch purely because of the fact that they were only resurrected from their skeletons, and therefore have only the basic desires of food, shelter, and chaos. Well, that last one is a bit unnatural, but they're practically zombies, so it checks out. Because of their unpredictable nature, they are greatly feared and should be avoided at all costs, since you'll never know if they're in a murdery mood or a super murdery mood. I love the description, I love the design, the line work is really nice. It's also another crisp one, but as I said, it's got a bit more line weight variety, especially the thick lines on the outside that I'm particularly fond of and do in my art style a lot. And Lazy Snake also gave the instruction that the fur should be a slightly lighter color than the muscly, sinewy kinds of bits on the character. I guess I didn't do that much. I made the fur a bit lighter, but not tons. But either way, I had so much fun rendering this, got to play around with fur again, and add some spots for the hyena-y kind of pattern. It was an awesome submission, Lazy Snake, and I hope you and everyone else likes what I did with the coloring on this one. Here it is. Our next submission is a really cool looking cowboy guy that comes to us from Justin Corp. It's got a very simple description that goes, "This is Levi Parks from the Wild West, coming to kill everybody that gets in his way." And there was a lot of stuff that I could interpret because Justin didn't give a bigger description of what's going on with the character, but that was kind of fun because I could decide what I wanted to do with the glowy arm kind of thing that looked a little bit ghost-like. And then he's got an arm that's got a little bit of a winter soldiery kind of texture to it, although I end up coloring it a little bit more like his skin tone. So basically when I was coloring this one, I just went with my instincts on what to do with the character, which might not have necessarily been the right thing to do, but overall I love how this ends up looking. And I had to color this one very differently. I picked it because I wanted to try a character that had a different kind of line work again. This one is a bit more scratchy and textured and a little bit more comic booky looking than some of the past few. And it was fun to work with, but it also meant that at the start, instead of just blocking in my colors like I normally would with my own art, I had to go in and flat the character by hand ahead of time, which didn't end up being too time consuming. It was just, you know, slightly different process. And one thing that I think is really cool from doing this whole video is how the characters are looking different but similar because they're all being done with different artists' styles of line work, but all with the same coloring style. It's just really cool. I'm so glad I made this the submission theme for the month. It was really fun coloring everyone's stuff. And we got a lot more to go. But for now, I hope y'all like what I did with Justin Corp's character. Here it is. Another cool thing to see from this month's challenge was what the differences were like between people working traditionally versus digitally. It's usually easier to tell the difference between digital and traditional art when there is coloring to it, because digital art just has that digital look in a lot of cases. There are people that can do really cool painterly stuff that's hard to tell if it's digital or traditional, but most of the time you can tell, which isn't necessarily a bad thing or anything. It's just, you can tell when something doesn't have real textures to it. But with inking, sometimes that's a lot harder to tell, including with the next one that I end up coloring. When I first looked at it, I thought it was digital, and it took me a minute of looking to be like, oh, wait a minute, no, this is just a really cleanly scanned image of a traditional drawing. I mean, even as I'm saying that, I'm kind of second-guessing myself, but I'm 99% sure it was traditionally drawn. Anyway, let's get into it. Next, we have a character coming to us from Matthias Porter, and the description goes like this. This patched burlap monstrosity was an evil sorcerer whose soul was housed in a pumpkin after he died with all his powers still intact. It grew its vines over time into a huge bramble. It ripped its roots from the ground and started moving on its own, making its vines take the shape or form of whatever it wanted. He also could jump onto people and wrap his vines around them to control their movements in an almost symbiotic way. Later, he found a scarecrow while he was crawling by a farm that he went to practice his hunting skills on unsuspecting farm animals. He made his vines go inside the scarecrow's ragged clothing, ripping out the straw from the inside and replacing it with his vines. He wandered around in his new scarecrow form into the farm and found a broken scythe formerly used for reaping crops. He took the blade with his vines, making it into one of his hands, while his pumpkin was the other. He used the scythe blade to carve a sinister face into the pumpkin. He now was a possessed jack-o'-lantern scarecrow with a twisted mind set on destroying every living thing on the planet. Now, Matthias had suggested for this character doing a little bit less saturated. I probably should have gone with that because it's what you suggested, but as I was drawing, I was realizing that I was making it more saturated, so I just kind of went with it. But I still end up liking how it turns out. I hope you do as well. Also, just as a reference to the channel, I made the Scarecrow shirt pattern the usual PopCross plaid kind of pattern. Thought that was kind of a fun addition. Thanks for the submission, Matthias, and I hope you all like the result. Next up is a character coming to us over email by Logan Cook, and it's a supervillain version of the Headless Horseman made to fight hero versions of classic Universal movie monsters. And the description and origin goes like this. The Headless Horseman was never taken seriously as a villain. He would be full of threats but never actually followed through with anything big. Until one day he had enough of being disgraced and traveled deep into the woods, further than he'd ever dared to go before. He came across a small hut that he believed to contain supernatural powers. A woman answered the door, her face hidden in shadow, and he was welcomed in, but not before a warning from the woman. For this power is unpredictable and may doom you for all eternity. He spent months training in an ancient dark magic, gaining powers well beyond his expectations. He fashioned a new suit out of materials she had on display, and he burned her hut to the ground with his unstable powers and flew off into the night sky, seeking revenge on those who'd underestimated him. On a mountaintop just past the hut, the woman gazed upon the night sky and grinned a wide, twisted smile as she vanished in a cloud of smoke. He still has the flaming pumpkins and the horse. They are now more ethereal as he is using magic. Colors similar to other costumes worn by the Headless Horseman. And I saw a few different versions of the Headless Horseman online. The one that I went with was a purple reddish kind of color, but I saturated everything up a bit more, making it a bit more Spider-Man villain kind of looking, which I hope you don't mind. I also might have taken too much creative liberty on what I did with the head, but I had a lot of fun with that, and I hope you like the result as well. It was some really nice line work to work with. Thanks so much, Logan, and I hope everybody digs the result. Next is a character coming to us from CT Arts, who actually drew this character on their YouTube channel, so make sure to check out that video as well. I'll link it in the description below. And it's really, really cool. It's got tons of line weight variety, more so than any other character I color this video, I think. And, well, anyway, I've skipped the description, so let's get back to that. It has no name. It has no past. All anyone knows about it is that if you see it, you should run. It always has a flock of crows flying in front of it, spotting its next victim. It seems to have a telepathic connection with the crows, but it's hard to tell. Many people that live near me think it's just a myth to scare children. It's not. I saw it slowly walking outside my window one school night, and it looked at me, slowly turning its head. I don't remember anything after that point except for when I woke up in the morning, paralyzed. As I said, the line weight variety is really awesome and really drew me in. I was a little bit concerned that I wouldn't be able to add much because there was so much detailing in the line work, and a lot of the detail does still come from the line work, but I think the coloring does, add something to it in a fun way. This one felt more similar to when I was coloring the box office artist's artwork because his art style has tons of detail in the inking as well. CT Arts is only 14 years old, but honestly, I would have guessed you were like 18 or something with this drawing, maybe older. It's really, really great, and I hope you and everybody else likes what I've done with the coloring. Here's the result. We're coming down to the end here with the last two coming up, and I just want to show off a whole bunch more of the submissions because there were a lot more submissions this time than in the last few videos. I didn't make the prompt as hard this month, and so I want to make sure to show off as much as possible. I can't show everything, but I think this time I'm showing like 340 or something of the submissions. I don't totally remember, but I think there were a lot of other awesome pieces that deserve at least a little bit of time in the sun. There were actually a few pieces in this video where I looked at them and I was like, this is super cool and really well done, but almost too creepy and unsettling for me. You've, at some point in the submission scrolls, probably seen one that popped up that you were like, oh, that's really unsettling. And those ones I was like impressed by, but also like, oh, I don't know if I want to color this because of how creepy it is. Which I guess isn't really fair, so apologies to people who did really awesome, really horrifying characters. Some of you made stuff too creepy for me. Anyway, let's get into the last couple of drawings. PratyushG sent in our next character, who is a Halloween Knight. When many sightings were reported of nasty creatures causing havoc, the Almighty sent the Halloween Knight to save Halloween. He's fighting those demons, but can he get some candy as well? It was a really cool character, and again, I had to do a different coloring technique for this one than the other ones. Because it had a nice thick black outline on the outside of the character, I could select the inside of the character pretty easily and then drop in a nice big yellowy orange to reddier orange kind of gradient, because I wanted that to be the base color of the character, and then I went in and changed the parts that I wanted to be green and light gray and dark gray, and that process kind of worked. I had to do that because there is some nice line variety in this one, and there's some nice line texturing in this character as well. I tried to make it very Halloween-y kind of colors, mostly orange and then some green, because, it's a Halloween night. And I was also thinking a little bit Transformers-like when I was rendering. I think that's because of the sort of metal-y strap kind of things going over the character's shoulders look a bit like headlights, which isn't necessarily what you intended, but I think rendering-wise it ends up making sense. And this one was super fun. I love that big arm on one side. The shoulder on it is really nice. Just overall, I thought it was super cool. The line work was really interesting and nice. And again, it's super fun seeing my coloring style on a bunch of different people's types of line work. This has been a super interesting experiment for me. Anyway, we're coming down to the end of this one, so hope y'all like the result. The final artwork of the day comes to us from Logic on the Discord. This is my monthly redraw submission. For this one, I tried going with a Wendigo-ish, skinny creature that often lurks in the woods, feeding off the flesh of any trespasser in its territory. You can see its spine protruding through its skin, and a very unnervingly long tail. Not only can this creature run at the speed of a cheetah, some say it can breathe fire. Though these occurrences are very rare, so it's not entirely confirmed. The flesh at the corners of its mouth is also stretched out through the neck, almost like it was cut, giving it a very eerie Joker-like smile. Say hello to what the locals call the Speed Demon. Underwhelming name, I know. Hope you like it. And I really did. I thought it was a nice, fun one to end on. Really nice, clean, simple line work. And I tried rendering this one a little bit similarly to what I'd done with Sad Dragon Child's character at the beginning. Because you said Wendigo, I was thinking a little bit furry at first, but I didn't really end up leaning into that, even though I do the same sort of streaky kind of texture for some of the lighting. It ends up looking a little bit more dinosaur scaly like, and I do still like how that looks, even though it's not what I was going for initially. I also did a bunch of subtle gradients of a kind of bluey kind of color going through the character's body to the ends of its hands and its feet and its tail, and I think for a very simple design that helps vary up the whole coloring look of it, just enough to make it not feel too simple. I think this was a great one to end on. It's nice and creepy and cool, and I hope you and everyone else like the results. Well, with this video over, to me, that basically means Halloween's over, so it's officially time for Christmas. That's how it works. The second Halloween's done, it's Christmas time. 2 months of watching glorious, terrible Hallmark movies starts now. But honestly, everybody, this was so much fun. I loved getting to work with your art instead of just totally redrawing it. Because my art style has developed so much since I started the community redraws, it takes me so much longer to do these videos usually, but this was a lot more manageable, and it was really cool seeing my coloring style with other people's inking. So I want to do something like this again for the November theme. I'm sure lots of people want to redraw, and I'm not saying I'm stopping doing those, but for now I want to do another round of coloring your artwork. So for November, I'm going to get really self-indulgent, and we're going to do black and white biomechs. Presumably a lot of you already know what they are, but for anyone who doesn't, a biomech is like a robotic version of Venom. They attach to a person and give them robot-like enhancements. But in most cases, they're only big enough to cover part of a person's body at a time, like their head and arm, or their legs, or something like that. If you want, you can do a bigger one. There are ones big enough to cover an entire person, but I generally think it's kind of cool when they're only taking over part of a person's body. But it's up to you. If you want more inspiration, you can check out my video, Biomech Kayla, which is the original short story I made for this channel, in which biomechs first canonically appeared. You can do a biomech of an existing pop culture character, of your own original character, or really any kind of character you want. Also keep in mind that different biomechs have absorbed different kinds of machinery, so they'll all look a bit different. You could have one that's very steampunk-like, one that looks like construction equipment, one that's very futuristic and sci-fi. Try to think that out as you're doing your design. You can submit via the Characters for Pop channel in the Discord, or at popcrossanimations@gmail.com. Both are linked in the description. I hope you're all as excited for this as I am, because I think it's going to be really cool. Not just because biomechs are my own kind of original creation, but because I think they really do provide a lot of opportunity to do cool things to existing or your own original characters. Thank you again to everyone who submitted for this month. I had such a blast with this video, and I can't wait to see what comes in for next month's video. But that's all for today. I'm Christian Pearson. This has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you all in the next one on Monday. Goodbye.